Hello and welcome to the York Creators podcast. My name is Ben Porter, and each week you can join me as I chat to someone from York's creative community. This week's guest is Laura Sanderson. Laura is the founder of Bright Young Things, a networking event for those earlier in their careers to learn from one another and collaborate on projects to bridge the gap between education and industry. She has experience working in a range of agencies across York and Leeds, and has run side projects including setting up a small online shop to produce and sell products such as cards, pins and patches for cancer patients, survivors and thrivers, after her own diagnosis with cancer in 2017. In this episode we chat about the process of finding your feet as a young creative, how it can feel like one step forward and two steps backwards with everything feeling uncertain and imposter syndrome creeping in. We discuss why job titles mean nothing and how difficult it can be applying for new jobs after being made redundant, as well as Laura's hopes for bringing back more human elements into the world of design and branding. Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
So we've exchanged a few emails and I heard you talk at the lockdown surgery, which we did with the Guild of Media Arts a while back. Yep. And that was really interesting. There's a lot of insight to kind of gain from that, and we'll touch on some of those subjects soon. But I thought a good place to kick off would be asking you where your creative journey began.
Probably school really. Sort of GCSE art was the main place, and then I sort of got to the end of GCSEs, as most people do, and realise I don't really know what I want to do with my life. Mm-hmm. But as the education system does, sort of you tend to have to decide there and then. And I didn't really understand how I could have a career or make money doing something that I enjoyed.
That seems to be a common thing with lots of people. You're not told at school that you can go into creative industries.
No. Like doing a project on cubism, I don't understand how that would teach me how I could have a career in art. I didn't really, looking at my life as a big picture, I didn't really understand where that was going to take me. So I sort of ditched it and just did it in my spare time. Toddled off to college, did uniform public services, then did a degree in criminology and psychology. Then halfway through that realised probably a bit deeper, pretty much hated my life. Like, that was not fun. Mm-hmm. Like, I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't doing well because I didn't enjoy it. So literally one day took my uni professor into his office and signed the paper there and then and quit. And then realised I need to tell my parents, and B, I had no plan. So literally took like a full year out working bar jobs, trying to figure out who I was again, I suppose. Mm-hmm. I'd gone down this route of a bit of conformity, and you're given this prospectus with these 20 courses in, and one of these is going to be your career, and shit, it's not going to be what I do now. And then I met my now husband Dan, and his sister's boyfriend was head of art at York College, Helen. And we were at a family event one day, and she just started talking to me about all these opportunities I could have. Then literally she signed me up, I went back, did my foundation course, and then somehow ended up on the degree and realised I wanted to be a graphic designer. Or not realised I wanted to be a graphic designer, I realised I could earn money doing something I enjoyed. Yeah. And graphic design just so happened to be that thing.
Okay. That's quite interesting, because I think I was similar how I ended up doing film, because for me music was always my thing and that's what I loved doing, and it was sort of either you get a record deal or you don't. They were the kind of two things, and I was trying at that for ages and didn't manage it, and then picked up a camera just to kind of as a project to get to know people. And it was only when I interviewed another filmmaker and he said to me like, oh, if you like doing this I can get you some work. And I was like, yeah, okay, it'd be better than care working, which is what I was doing at the time. And I just assumed that it would pay the same as care working. And then when he was like, oh no, it's like £200 a day, I was like, what? Why isn't everybody doing this? It was like, I've been slogging away doing 10-hour shifts for like £70.
I could work 2 days a week and earn the same money, what?
Yeah, and it's like, why does no more people not know that you can do this? So what was it that once you started looking at design that kind of got you hooked on it?
I think I always struggled being a creative, that I wasn't an artist. I think there's this thing of creativity as being an artist, and I didn't have a style. I don't know if that's the right thing to say. I didn't have, you see some painters or sculptors or, and they've found their route and they found their medium that they want to work with. I didn't find that. So on my degree, you did sort of like different modules on different things and sort of figured out what you want, basically what you're good at and what you could do. And when it came to graphic design and I was given a brief, and it wasn't solely on create something, it was this person wants this and X, Y, and Z, these are deliverables, and I had a route to go down. So it was less pressure on me to be an artist, and I could be a creative instead.
Yeah. Limitations are really important when you're creating things.
Yeah.
Because I found that as well. The hardest project is when a client just goes, do whatever you want. And it's like, but I'll probably do something and then you won't like it. So give me a bit of something to work with.
If you do anything, but it's going to be wrong.
Yeah.
Because you know they've got an idea in their head. And I think that idea was what I didn't have to be, keep doing air quotes, an artist. Because I didn't have something at that time I necessarily wanted to express, or I didn't have a medium that I felt comfortable with. So being given a brief, I was like, yes, I can do this. I've got creativity. I just need someone to tell me what to channel it into, and I can do it.
Yeah, I think that's the same with a lot of people. A lot of people, they cut themselves short by thinking like, oh, I can't draw, or I can't sit there and come up with things out of thin air.
Yeah.
But if you talk to people who you would assume create things out of thin air, if you talk to them, usually they've got some idea of it's other things that they've seen before, and they're just pulling things together in new ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your perception of the design industry when you were getting started, and how is that compared to what it's actually like working in it?
I think I thought I would get a job straight away. I'd work in this massive agency and we'd play pool at lunchtimes and it'd be really chill, and you'd get given these massive budgets, these big branding projects, and I'd have a great time just going away, and the client would love everything I did. And I very quickly realised it's nothing like that. Well, I was going to say I struggled to get a job, but I tried to get work experience sort of in my second year of uni, because we did the same days at York College where I did my degree as the third years. So we saw them while they're in their third year struggling to get work experience. So I suddenly thought to myself, why am I going to wait till third year when everyone is going to try and do the same? So I managed to get work experience with skinny design Harrogate my second year. And I only did like 1 or 2 days a week, but pretty much solidly until I finished my degree. And then they offered me a job. Thank you, Ian. You were my lifesaver.
Great.
He was the best boss to have initially.
And what were some early lessons that you learned from him or from working there?
The client isn't always going to like what you do. What did I learn from Ian? Not to come into work hungover.
Okay, that's a
because
good one.
you'll spend and him and Natalie, who was my senior, will be laughing at this. Not to spend the day asleep underneath your desk. That was one of the main lessons I learned from Ian. Ian and Natalie, who were the two main people at Skinny Design, they work great together because Natalie is very disciplined. She knows, she programs everything about it, so she taught me loads, whereas Ian is more the artistic-y side. So they were like a great blend. Mm-hmm. So I got the energy from him, but also the discipline from her. So I think more of the lessons I took further in my career probably came from Natalie.
Okay.
But my creative flair lessons probably came from Ian.
Yeah. But as well, that's something as well, that everybody works differently and has different things, and so a good team, it's more balanced than like trying to take everything on yourself, which is something I've struggled with before. It's like working on my own. It's like, I'm just going to do everything, and that doesn't work. You just burn yourself out. Yeah.
I think they taught me, both of them together taught me job titles mean pretty much nothing. Because although they probably do when you get into a bigger business, can't really comment because I've not been in a massive agency, but with their duo, it wasn't he ran the business, he owned the business, and she was a senior designer. It wasn't that he ran the business and gave the work. There was a massive crossover between the two, so it wasn't just you were given a brief and you did the work. Some days you'd have to go to a meeting, some days you need to win a client. There was that mixture of everything. Yeah. You get that when you speak to people as well. Two people at different companies have the exact same job title and completely different job roles. Yeah. Or you could find people with different job titles who are actually doing the same job. We found that in our company, because I part own the company with a business partner, and so we just got to pick our own titles. And so you just pick it out of thin air. So, yeah. So teaching young creatives is something that you do with Bright Young Things. Do you want to tell me about that? Yeah, so Bright Young Things came about sort of the end of last year. It was initially an idea from Kate, my boss now. Where at work now, we do these things called Technical Tuesday, and we get clients in and we basically teach them basically what we do, so they have a better understanding of how we help their business, but I think also a bit of it is that all these things take time and they have a reason. And Kit had this idea of teaching the younger people sort of underneath, but I didn't want it to be limited to our clients. And then something in that sort of sparked this idea of bringing young people together. And you touched on it before when we were chatting before about not necessarily being one just to go up to people and speak to them. And I think I was the same with the York Creators meetups, and these things were going on, but I didn't really have the confidence to go to them. Yeah. So I figured, what if I set one up and people come, they might listen to me?
Yeah.
I think there was this idea of it not being seniors or agency owners, none of that level of intimidation. I don't mean that as in the people are intimidating, but I think as a fresh graduate, as a junior, even somebody looking for a job who isn't necessarily at senior level, speaking to somebody senior can be quite intimidating. Yeah. Not knowing, I think it's that imposter syndrome kicks in, doesn't it? Not knowing if what you know is good enough. And I figured if we got all these people together, we could show how great we all are. And it's just sort of, although the pandemic kind of screwed us over, it's grown really nicely in a short space of time.
So I'm jumping around a little bit here, but when you originally applied to be on the podcast a while back, something you wanted to talk about was redundancy. And I think that's quite an important thing to touch on, because I don't hear too many people talking about that. And for a lot of us, like, it's not just work, like our whole identity often resolves around what we do, particularly for something we enjoy doing, like something creatively. Do you want to tell me a bit about your story with that?
Yeah, so I literally got back to work the day after my honeymoon, just got married, top of the world, and then got hit with redundancy. The agency I'd worked for previously was Leeds based, but obviously because I worked from home, you work massively in the Leeds scene as such. So being made redundant, I quickly realised I don't know anybody. Like, where do I go? I was in the middle of that junior to midweight, so where do I pitch myself? Again, a bit of imposter syndrome. Am I good enough to go for that midweight? Also, how the hell do you get a job? Because every job I had two at this point. But Skinny I'd got through uni and through work experience, and then Morgan Agency, my next agency, they approached me and offered me a job. So I'd never actually gone and looked for a job. And I was suddenly redundant. I didn't know anybody in the industry. I didn't have a portfolio, didn't have materials to use for a portfolio, which is a whole other story, and was just left on a kayak with no paddle, I think that's the saying. And I quickly realised, like, nobody talks about this, the struggle, and it took me a year to find a job, and like, it's a long time not to earn any money. I mean, thankfully I met up with sort of Owen, and then I met Matt, and he gave me some freelance work, and I thought I'm going to spend that time meeting as many people as I can. But yeah, then I think that's sort of where Brighton things sort of tied in as well, because being in that junior to midway, and maybe I was a bit more junior, being cast out again, but I wasn't junior enough to go for junior because my pay didn't reflect that. So I couldn't go for these graduate jobs, which is often where a junior is. So where do I go?
Yeah. It's a whole mismatch on the kind of idea of valuing people based on how long they've been in the industry, when sometimes it's not that clear cut, is it?
No. And I think that's where job titles comes in as well. Like, I hate job titles. Don't think they necessarily reflect the person. If you've been with a company, so for example, how long I've been in the agency at this point? I've been in the industry about 3.5, maybe 4 years by this point, being made redundant. But my job title had never changed. I'd never really asked for it to be changed because I didn't need to. It wasn't something I thought about on a daily basis. Again, because I didn't need to. I think it's really hard, and other people might have found this, it's really hard to go for a midweight job when you're not classed as a midweight anywhere. I mean, you can lie in your CV, but I don't know why I didn't just do that, actually.
Yeah. Well, the other thing you mentioned as well, which doesn't get brought up that often, is, so at Hewitt and Walker, when we were hiring people, all we really cared about was the stuff that they'd made. So we'd have a quick look through the CV. We didn't really care if they'd been to university or not. all we cared about was what do you make, what do you have in your portfolio, what can you show us.
Yeah.
But if you work for a company which doesn't let you use any of the work that you've done, what do you show people?
That was the really hard thing. I mean, I had uni work, but I'm sure everyone does this. You look back at what you did in uni and think, oh my God, did I do that? Like, it wasn't good enough. Because you grow as a designer, you learn more, your work improves. I had an agency who wouldn't allow me to use any work, and rightly so for some things because they were covered under NDAs. Yeah, what do you use? So I ended up faking briefs, fake until you make it, basically. Making up a brief, like, let's rebrand this. I approached a couple of businesses asking if I could do stuff literally for free for them so I can just have something in my portfolio to show people. I think that's where the crossover comes between, and you touched on it before, not just being a job, it's who you are as a person. So me being creative, I always sort of had a personal project on the go anyway, so sort of shove some of that in. But I think fake it till you make it was literally how I did it.
Yeah. And I think that happens so often. It's like when we wanted more commercial jobs, we would go out and we would make a fake film for a pretend client, and we would pour our own money into it, sometimes spending £1,500, £2,000 on this film, to then take it to someone and be like, hey, look what we've made, now can we work for you? And luckily sometimes it worked, it did pay off for us, but imagine other people, like, you can pour so much into that and it just doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Or if you don't have the kind of the privilege of being able to do that, then it wipes a whole section of the population out who aren't able to put that time and money into those kind of projects.
Yeah. I was really fortunate that Dan, my husband, had a good job. I had a bit of money saved, so I didn't necessarily have to go into work the very next day. So I had some of that time. I think after 6 months I started working in retail because, well, I've never not worked since the day I was like 15. So not earning money was a massive deal breaker for me. It meant a lot. I didn't want to have to rely on somebody else. But I was fortunate to have that time to be able to make that work, to be able to fake it. When in reality, businesses aren't going to ask you, is this a real project? I don't think I've ever been asked that in my life.
Yeah, well, to a certain extent, it doesn't really matter too much.
No.
Like, because if you can do the work for a real client, for a fake client, you can do it for a real client. And I guess that was the thing with our films as well, when we were looking at what people could make. Like, you get it particularly if you put in Nike advert. There's like, so everybody makes a Nike advert because it's something that, it's so kind of visual, sports and stuff. Yeah, it's probably a good job Nike doesn't actually come down on people, because there'd be a lot of films off the internet if they did.
A lot of people would lose work there.
Yeah. So where do you see the design industry going in the next 10 to 20 years?
I think given everything that's going on, it could literally go anywhere. I hope we don't lose some of the smaller agencies over the next few years as the economy as a whole has to repair from obviously this year. But I also hope that everyone comes together a bit more. I think it's starting to happen in York. I think the agencies sort of pass work to and from each other, because not every agency is suitable for every brief. That doesn't mean you can't help one another. So I hope the community comes together more. I think already has done, probably outside of work, but I'm not sure how that relates to sort of agencies getting work.
Yeah, well, we've seen lots of collaboration with things like Design Week and Media Alley, and then different people getting involved in different people's projects and supporting each other.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see how that reflected in ROI for agencies. That's a really corporate thing to say. I don't know where that came from.
I know what you mean.
But yeah, that would be really interesting. I think again, this comes back to that thing, it's not just a job, is it? It's the passion for people. I think that is probably where agencies fail sometimes, is concentrating too much on ROI and not enough on passion. I think passion drives a lot more. But I really hope the industry comes out of this stronger.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed, touch wood.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, do you feel it's worth it for you in terms of the extra time and energy you've invested outside of work? Do you feel like that's coming back to you?
100%.
Yeah.
Not, I don't think of it in a monetary value, but not in a monetary value, but in the number of people I've met so far getting involved in York Design Week, setting up Bright Young Things. You can't put a price on all of that, and that community and that friendship and that sense of belonging is worth so much more. I think as I've grown through the ranks, going back to job titles, God, there is a certain element of the job that has to become budget focused. And I think getting involved in York Design Week and Bright Young Things gives me more of a balance of that, because I don't want conversations to come back to ROI, which they just have done, because I don't want to be about that. I think I'm finding the more you step up the ladder as a designer, and people might not agree with this, your admin gets bigger and you are talking to clients more, trying to win clients more, talking about budgets, are we spending too much time on this? And I think that gives me the balance of it.
Yeah.
I forgot what the main question was.
That's all right. No, you definitely covered it. And I think for me, like, the only other thing I would add is it's about energy. The more energy you put into stuff, that energy creates energy and people give it back. And suddenly, like, you know, everybody's bouncing off each other, you get new ideas, people are excited by things. And it's like, if you just stay in your own little lane and don't really get involved with other people, it's like, that's great. But then I find if I'm in a mode where I'm doing that and I get down, it's like, where do I turn to?
Yeah, exactly. I think as well, sometimes the day job can be, sometimes it's not fun doing an annual review for a finance company, and that can drain you and drain your passion for the industry or passion for design. And I think having something else to do on an evening or in the back of your mind thinking, God, I can't wait for Project K to go live, it sort of keeps that energy and that fire burning. I think you need that balance. I think otherwise you probably burn out.
Yeah. Yep. I won't go into that because I've not got time, but is there anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Yeah. I want to talk about, because I don't think people talk about enough, us as people in a sense, and health issues and the daily life things. I think as social media grows, that becomes more intertwined in the younger generation's lives. Like this picture perfect, we only show our best bits on Instagram. It's really easy to forget that people are going through struggles and people get ill, they have down days. Women have a period, you get period pain. Really sick of people not understanding that and not talking about it enough. I think as an industry, although I'm seeing some agencies do it, there needs to be a bit more openness about that. There needs to be a bit more talk about it. You see a lot of agencies work with charities for certain things, and it'd be really good to sort of not just see the work that you've done for that charity, but how that as a designer made you feel working on it. Or because you do feel, if you're working on something for, I don't know, let's go cancer research, the things you have to read, the images you have to see, that pulls on your heartstrings. It gives you feelings, and I don't hear people talk about that enough. I want to hear more people talk about, I didn't work today because I had period pain, I couldn't get out of bed, or I've got X, Y, and Z wrong with me. I think that probably comes from being ill myself and almost feeling guilt for not being able to work.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, they're the human stories. Yeah. It's the story behind the story, because usually what you come up with, this is not an attack on designers or branding or anything, but often what companies market themselves as is a very polished, clean, sort of perfect thing, and that's not the reality.
No. I think the agency I was working at when I went through chemotherapy, they weren't gonna, so I don't mean this just to them, I probably mean this as a generalisation. You're not going to market yourself that the designer that's working on your project is sat at home in bed ill from chemo, bald, you know, with IVs in her, and sometimes, like when I was on chemo, you'd be there for sort of 4 or 5 hours and I'd take my laptop and I'd work, not because I was expected to, it's really important to say that, but because work was what kept me going. And the day I had chemo, I felt well. It was the following days afterwards. So I would get in that time to work, but an agency isn't going to tell a client that. And I get why And you don't have to tell the whole story, but there needs to be some sort of humanisation to something somewhere.
Yeah.
Because we're losing whoever everyone is. I mentioned it in the lockdown surgery we did, because at the beginning of lockdown my dad got diagnosed with terminal cancer, with a life expectancy of a year. Touch wood, he gets longer. But if I hadn't mentioned that, no one would know that I'm putting out this work, I'm doing all these things with Bright Young Things, but also I've got this struggle. And I think when that happened, I put things out to Bright Young Things, the group we have, and said, look guys, I can't do social media for a while. I just need to switch off. Can someone take it over? And of course there's that network there and they do it. But I think there needs to be that openness that people feel they can do that. And they can say, I can't work today because mentally I'm just not there.
Yeah. And it usually only takes one person to go first, and then everybody else has something to share.
Yeah.
Which is actually going back to the lockdown surgery thing again. You did it really well in terms of the questions were going around people, and everybody sort of gave perhaps the prepared answer that they wanted to give. And then you just opened up and you just talked about your honest experiences. And after that, it changed the dynamic of what other people said. Other people like, oh yeah, actually, I didn't mention this before, but I'm struggling with this. And then everybody's got stuff that they're struggling with, haven't they?
Yeah, I think what I did with lockdown surgery was we generally sort of went through what the topics were going to be, and I didn't read them because, like you just said, I'm an overthinker, and you prepare the answers in your head,
Yeah.
and then you adjust them and you polish them a little bit, and you say that out because that doesn't sound great. And actually, I think that honesty, like you said, it takes one person, and then somebody else will open up. And I think I found being ill myself, you soon realise you don't have to go far to find somebody else who has had cancer affect their life somewhere, whether it be themselves, a family member, a friend. And when you open up that conversation, you get a deeper conversation with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, all the time. Even like I've started doing these every month I'll collect together the videos that I've got on my mobile phone, and I'll just put them up as like a little 1 minute highlight of the month, and I'll just say something over the top. And one I posted a couple of days ago for September was just talking about I've had constant dizziness since August because of an ear infection. And it's not really bad, but it's affected my life a bit.
Yeah.
And several of the comments were like, oh, I've had this too, or like, my friend's got this, and it's like so more common than I realised. And it's like, oh, actually, like, this is something that's affecting lots of people.
Yeah.
Even Clinton, Clinton Lofthouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was saying he's had it for 2.5 months, and he was asking if I'd tried these different manoeuvres and things. And so I'd have never known that, and he maybe wouldn't have offered that if I hadn't posted about it. And
yeah. Everyone is going through something, and the crossover in them, I think if everyone just lets their guard down a little bit and doesn't worry about the judgment, we can actually help each other a lot more.
Yeah. Seems like a good place to end.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
So if people want to get in touch with you, find out more about what you do, where's the best place to go?
Probably Instagram, Bright Young Things. I think it's bright_young_things.
We'll put the link in the description.
Yeah, I was going to say I might got that wrong. It's probably the best place. Or through your design week, reach out to somebody.
Great.
Cool.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.